Picture Nancy Guthrie on the night of January 31st. She is 84 years old. She has just spent the evening with her family, her daughter Annie, her son-in-law Tommaso. Dinner, games. The kind of ordinary evening that happens in millions of homes every weekend. Her son-in-law walks her to her door. The garage opens, she goes inside. The door closes at 9:50 p.m. She has no idea that someone has been watching her for 7 months. She doesn't know that her home address has been searched on Google at least 5 times since March 2025. She doesn't know that someone assessed the layout of her property, looked at images of her house from the outside, and looked up exactly how much money her daughter Savannah earns as the co-anchor of the Today Show. She doesn't know that on January 11th, 20 days ago, that by her calendar, someone searched her address and may have driven down her street that same night. She doesn't know any of this. She just goes inside. The door closes. And 3 hours and 57 minutes later, her doorbell camera goes dark. The monster was already prepared. The question this investigation has to answer is, how do you find someone this patient, this deliberate, this invisible? Today we start with the one thing they may not have been careful enough about. The Google searches. The digital trail that was hiding in plain sight, and what it tells us about who is responsible for taking Nancy Guthrie from her home on February 1st, 2026. Welcome to Twisted Crime Ledger. Before we get into the Google evidence, let's make sure we're all on the same page with the core facts. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of NBC's Today Show. She lives alone in her home in the Catalina foothills, a neighborhood just outside Tucson, Arizona. By all accounts, she is sharp, independent, and deeply loved by her family and community. On the evening of January 31st, 2026, Nancy had dinner with family at her daughter Annie's home. Her son-in-law, Tommaso Chioni, dropped her off at her front door at approximately 9:48 p.m. The garage door opened. It closed 2 minutes later. That is the last confirmed sighting of Nancy Guthrie alive. The following morning, February 1st, Nancy was supposed to join friends for a live-streamed church service, something she did most Sundays. She didn't show up. Friends called her children. Her family rushed to her home around 11 a.m. Her phone was inside. Her personal items were untouched. There was no sign she left voluntarily. They called 911 at noon. What investigators found when they arrived changed everything. There was blood on the front porch. DNA testing confirmed it was Nancy's. The doorbell camera had been physically removed. And at 1:47 a.m., roughly 4 hours after she was dropped off, that camera had gone dark. Sheriff Chris Nanos made the call immediately. Nancy was taken against her will. Since then, this case has become one of the most watched missing person investigations in recent American history.
Newsroom of the search for Nancy Guthrie. This is now in day 11 now. FBI agents are conducting an extensive search along multiple roadways in the Catalina foothills area. And that's where we are as we kick off a brand new hour here, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith in New York. Good to be with you, John.
Good to see you as well, Sandra. What a roller coaster this is. I'm John Roberts in Washington. This is America Reports. Still no suspects in the case so far. NBC says tips have increased dramatically after the FBI released new video of a potential subject during this hour yesterday. You'll remember those surreal images at her front door. Federal agents were back searching the area around Annie Guthrie's home. That was on Tuesday night.
All right, all eyes go back to those cameras located along the route between the two Guthrie homes and whether there is more evidence yet to be uncovered. Fox team coverage. Paul Morrow is at the Pima County Sheriff's Office with brand new analysis.
The FBI is involved. Customs and Border Protection, search and rescue teams. Over 400 investigators at peak deployment. More than 40,000 tips. A reward that has now climbed to over $202,000. And as of today, day 23, Nancy Guthrie has not been found. No suspect has been arrested. No charges have been filed. But there is a digital trail, and it tells a story that the news is only beginning to piece together. Let's talk about the Google searches. And I want to walk you through these slowly because the individual pieces matter, but the pattern they form together is what's truly disturbing. Fox News Digital, using publicly available Google Trends data, identified a series of targeted searches for Nancy Guthrie's home address, all originating in Tucson, Arizona. Here's what that timeline looks like. Search 1, between March 1st and 8th, 2025, a Google image search for Nancy Guthrie's home address. Not just the address itself, images of it. What does that tell you? Whoever was searching wasn't looking for a street number on a map. They were looking at the property, the exterior, the layout. Search 2, between June 21st and 28th, 2025, another address search, 7 months before Nancy disappeared. Search 3, between November 30th and December 1st, 2025. Another Google image search for the address, 2 months before the abduction. Search 4, between December 13th and 20th, 2025. A search for Savannah Guthrie salary. Someone in Tucson, weeks before the kidnapping, was looking up how much money Nancy's daughter made. Search 5, January 11th, 2026. The address is searched again. Now I need you to hold that last date in your mind. January 11th, because investigators asked neighbors to pull their Ring camera footage from January 11th between 9 p.m. and midnight. They haven't explained why publicly, but the question has to be asked. Was someone physically conducting surveillance on Nancy Guthrie's home the same night they searched for her address? But now, and I want to be precise here, Google itself has noted that trends data for low-volume searches can include statistical noise. A Google spokesperson said, and I'm quoting directly here, that a spike for an uncommon topic is not definitive evidence that a search actually happened. So we are not treating these searches as confirmed proof of anything. What we're treating them as is what any forensic analyst would treat them as: a documented pattern that fits the behavioral profile of a targeted, premeditated crime. Here's why that distinction matters. Because investigators in cases like this don't rely on Google Trends. They subpoena Google directly. They get the actual search records, the IP addresses, the device identifiers. And that is almost certainly what the FBI has done or is doing right now. The trends data is the shadow. The subpoena reveals the source. Let me ask you something. What kind of person searches for an elderly woman's home address 5 separate times over 10 months in the same city she lives in, culminating in a search 3 weeks before she is abducted? This isn't curiosity, this is victimology. This is how predators select targets. This brings me to something the news has largely glossed over: the forensic psychology of how this target was selected. Because whoever did this didn't just grab a random person, they chose Nancy Guthrie specifically. And the Google evidence gives us a window into that selection process. Former FBI behavioral analyst and forensic psychology expert Dr. Mary Ellen O'Toole has written extensively about targeted abductions of elderly victims. Boy, the pattern is consistent. The perpetrator identifies a high-value target with a wealthy or prominent family member, assesses the target's vulnerability, age, mobility, living arrangements, daily routine, and then confirms the financial incentive before making their move. Now look at what those searches confirm. Address searches, location confirmed. Image searches, property layout assessed. Savannah Guthrie salary. Financial value of the family established. This is textbook pre-operational surveillance, step by step, months in advance. And Nancy fit the profile of someone a predator would consider vulnerable. She was 84 years old. She lived alone. She had limited mobility. She depended on daily medication to survive. Yeah, and her daughter was one of the most recognizable journalists in America, which meant the family had both means and motive to pay a ransom. The ransom demand in this case was reportedly $6 million in Bitcoin. 2 deadlines passed. No confirmed proof of life has been received. Here's what former FBI hostage negotiator Jason Pack told Fox News, and I want you to hear his framing carefully. Pack said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the DNA found on the glove is promising, but investigators have to establish whether the DNA inside the glove matches the DNA found inside the house before they can connect it to a single suspect. 2 separate DNA samples, potentially 2 separate individuals. That raises a question the investigation has not answered publicly. Is it possible this wasn't one person acting alone? Now we need to talk about the contradictions in this case, because there are several, and they matter. Contradiction 1, no suspects versus we showed businesses a list of names. On multiple occasions, Sheriff Nanos has told the media there are no suspects and no persons of interest. That is the official public position. But Fox News and local Tucson outlets reported that FBI agents were canvassing local businesses, gun stores, sporting goods retailers, and showing employees photographs and names of individuals. Local business owners confirmed it. The sheriff says no suspects. The FBI is showing names to witnesses. Those 2 things cannot both be fully true at the same time. Either the sheriff is using a very narrow technical definition of suspect, meaning no one has been formally charged, or there is a deliberate gap between what is being said publicly and what is actively being investigated. Both of those possibilities are standard law enforcement strategy. You don't tip off a suspect that they're being watched. But it does mean the public picture is deliberately incomplete. Contradiction 2. The glove DNA does not match the house DNA. This one is critical and it's being underreported. The DNA recovered from the glove found 2 miles from Nancy's home, a glove the FBI says appears to match the gloves worn by the suspect in the doorbell video, did not match the DNA found inside Nancy's house. Think about what that means. Either 2 different people left DNA at different locations, or the glove DNA came from a contamination source unrelated to the crime. Or, and this is the theory that should keep investigators up at night, there were multiple individuals involved with different roles in different locations. Sheriff Nanos has publicly confirmed that investigators have not ruled out multiple suspects. Contradiction 3, the camera was destroyed, but the FBI recovered the footage. This detail was enormous when it broke, and it deserves more attention than it got. Nancy did not have an active subscription for her Nest camera. That means, logically, the footage should not have been saved to any server. The suspects seemed to know this. They physically tampered with and removed the camera. It was deliberate. It was calculated. But FBI Director Kash Patel released the footage anyway, recovered, as he put it, from residual data in back-end systems. In plain terms, Google retains deleted and cached data in its infrastructure even without an active subscription. The suspect thought they destroyed the evidence. They didn't. Here's the analytical question this raises. How did someone who planned the subduction for months, who researched the address, scouted the property, assessed the family's wealth, not know that Google retains back-end data? Was this a sophisticated operation that made a critical technical error? Or is the sophistication of this crime being overestimated? That tension, amateur versus professional, is one of the most fascinating open questions in this case. Let's talk about where the investigation stands forensically, because this is where things get genuinely fascinating from an evidence standpoint. On DNA from the glove, no CODIS match. That means whoever left that DNA has never been arrested for a qualifying offense in the United States. They are not in the system. Clean record, or they've been careful their entire life up until this moment. DNA from inside Nancy's house. Mixed sample. Multiple contributors. Currently sitting in a lab in Florida where investigators say there are challenges separating the profiles. Sheriff Nanos told NBC that the technology may need weeks, months, or potentially longer to resolve those challenges. So where does that leave investigators? They're pivoting to investigative genetic genealogy. IgG. This is the same technique that caught the Golden State Killer after 40 years. The same technique that identified Brian Kohberger in the Idaho murders using DNA from a knife sheath and a Q-tip from his parents' trash. Here's how it works. The DNA is converted into a genetic code and uploaded into public genealogy databases. Specifically GED Match and Family Tree DNA, the only two platforms that allow law enforcement access. The system then matches that DNA against profiles to build a family tree. You're not necessarily finding the suspect directly, you're finding their cousin, their uncle, their second cousin twice removed, and you work backward from there. Chief Genetic Genealogist C.C. Moore, who has personally worked on some of the most high-profile IgG cases in the country, told News Nation that the critical bottleneck here is the database limitation. The two platforms law enforcement can access have a fraction of the users that Ancestry and 23andMe have. Moore said, and I want you to hear this. If investigators could access Ancestry's 25 million profiles or 23andMe's 12 million, a match could come in days or weeks. Restricted to the smaller databases, it could take months, or it might never come. But here's what Moore also said, directed almost like a public message at the person who did this. She said whoever took Nancy Guthrie should be extremely concerned right now. Because IgG doesn't need a direct match. It needs a relative. And that relative might not even know they're in a database that could expose whoever did this. The net is wide, and it's closing. Let's put the three most credible theories on the table and analyze each one honestly. Theory 1. A lone, financially motivated kidnapper with local knowledge. Evidence for the Google searches originated in Tucson. The suspect on the doorbell footage appeared to know the camera location, approaching with their head down. The ransom demand was specific, $6 million in Bitcoin. The timing, late night 4 hours after drop-off, suggests surveillance of her routine. Evidence against the DNA from the glove doesn't match the house DNA, suggesting possible multiple actors. A lone individual pulling off a surveillance operation this prolonged without any associates would be unusual. And why, after months of planning, would you use a Walmart backpack exclusively sold at one retail chain? One of the most traceable items possible? Probability. Plausible but incomplete without DNA clarification. Theory 2. A coordinated, multi-person operation with ransom as primary motive. Evidence for Sheriff Nanos confirmed multiple suspects have not been ruled out. Two separate DNA sources. The level of planning, months of Google surveillance, camera awareness, clean DNA profile suggesting no prior record, is more consistent with a group than a solo actor. The ransom notes reportedly used cryptocurrency, suggesting at least some technical sophistication. Evidence against multi-person operations are harder to keep quiet. More people means more exposure. No credible tips have emerged from the public identifying more than one individual. Probability, strong. The evidence pattern is more consistent with coordination than solo action. Theory 3, someone in Nancy's extended orbit, not a stranger. Evidence for the searches were hyper-local, Tucson-based. Whoever searched knew exactly which address to search. Nancy's neighborhood is not famous. You don't stumble onto that address. You know it, or someone told you. The ransom notes, two of which investigators believe are connected to the actual abductor, suggest direct knowledge of the family's financial capacity. Evidence against. The Guthrie family has been fully cleared by investigators. And Nanos has publicly stated that no one in Nancy's close circle is under suspicion. Probability. The stranger theory remains the official position. But the Google search pattern raises questions about how a stranger would know this particular address well enough to search it specifically months in advance. As of today, February 23rd, 2026, day 23, here's where this investigation stands. Nancy Guthrie has not been found. No arrest has been made. DNA results are delayed. The Google search trail is in investigators' hands. Subpoena data, not trends, the real records. The suspect's unique holster and Ozark Trail backpack are being tracked through retail channels. The FBI is asking neighbors to review footage from January 11th. And over $202,000 in reward money is sitting unclaimed. Here is the detail that haunts me most about this case. Not the blood on the porch, not the removed camera, not even the ransom demand. It's this. Nancy was 84 years old. She had limited mobility. She needed daily medication to survive. And someone spent 7 months researching her home, her property, her daughter's salary, mapping out her life with cold precision, before walking up to her front door at 1 a.m. with a mask, a gun, and a backpack. That is not a crime of opportunity. That is predation. Deliberate, patient, calculated. And somewhere in the digital infrastructure of Google's back-end servers, in a Florida DNA lab, in the GEDmatch database, and on the Ring cameras of Nancy's neighbors, the answer to who did this already exists. The question is which thread gets pulled first. If you have any information, anything at all, the FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The reward is $202,500. And someone out there knows something. If this breakdown helped you understand this case at a level the news isn't giving you, that's what Twisted Crime Ledger is here for. We don't recap headlines. We reconstruct evidence. Subscribe so you don't miss the next update on Nancy Guthrie, because when the DNA results come back, when that genealogy match drops, we are going to break it down frame by frame. Drop your theory in the comments. Theory 1, 2, or 3, which one do you believe fits the evidence? And if you've been following this case, tell me, what detail do you think the news is burying? I'll see you in the next one.